Hi, everybody. Welcome to Zoomlandia. Excited to have everyone joining us this afternoon. Very grateful to have a team of folks at Crow Canyon who've been able to connect us through technology and bring you to a really exciting series of webinars and even a marmot cam. I mean, what a world. We even have a marmot cam to connect people to campus, and the marmots have taken over Crow Canyon's campus. It's pretty exciting to see them all and their babies. I think we have a few babies that are out there, so it's a fun way to engage with our Crow Canyon campus at a distance. Excited to have you all here tonight, and I think I'll go ahead and kind of get started just with a big moment of gratitude and a thank you for particularly Dylan and Taylor, who have been working behind the scenes to help coordinate these webinars. And certainly it takes a large team of people to produce these series, to organize, to partner, to collaborate with many of our staff members and many of our partner organizations and our friends around the country who are helping to produce some educational content for us all to enjoy during this time of social distancing and quarantine. So our heart goes out to all of you all over the world who are at home and feeling the effects of the quarantine in different ways. We want you all to know that we're thinking of you and hope that these webinars are a way for us to connect. It warms our heart to know that you all are interested and really want to tune in every week to hear some different stories from different people in different areas of expertise. So thank you so much for making it possible. We love our Crow Canyon community, all of you out there that help make it a success. Just a few housekeeping things in terms of Zoom conferencing. Some of you might be new to it, and there is a little icon at the bottom of your screen that says Q&A. I'm going to be your moderator. I'm Sarah Payne. I'm the Chief Outreach Officer for the Crow Canyon Archaeological Center. And I'm happy to get your questions in the queue, and if it's pertinent to something that Emerald is showing at the time, I'll probably go ahead and interrupt her. Otherwise, I might save the questions to the end. But we'll definitely try to get to all of those questions. You can also move our talking heads. So you probably see my head floating on your screen. And if you move your cursor over my head, you should be able to move my head wherever you want so that it doesn't interfere with what you're looking at on the screen. If you have any difficulties with Zoom, we are live streaming to our Facebook page. So you can find us on Facebook and should be able to see us there. You can send us your thumbs up or your hearts and tune in on that platform. And then we are also recording this webinar, so we're happy to put that recording on our YouTube page, usually within a few hours or even the next day. We typically have that recording available. And then we're also archiving those webinars on our website. So there are a couple of sources where you can view the recordings. And of course, we would be grateful for you to subscribe to the YouTube channel. We've got a lot of webinars that we're posting there on a weekly basis. So there's a lot to see. Just wanted to put a slide up for those of you who might be new to Crow Canyon. I wanted to share a little bit about our mission. In a nutshell, we're really a place of passion, and we're guided by principles that there are many ways of knowing the past, and everybody's history matters. There are many different ways that we can look at the past, learn from that, and help it to navigate some of the present challenges that we're facing today as individuals, as families, as communities, and as a society. So if you haven't yet had an opportunity to visit our website, crowcanyon.org, we have a lot of resources for teachers, students, college students, adults. We have a online database. It's one of the largest archaeological research databases in the country. There's just a great deal of information that can be gained through our website. It's all free and open access. So I encourage you to visit our platform there. We do have another webinar coming up this week. It's Dr. Steve Luxon, who will be discussing the T-shaped doorway enigma. So that'll be this Thursday, April 30th at 4 p.m. So be sure to tune into that one. And we do have, we've been partnering with the Four Corners lecture series contributors as well. So we'll have a couple of those coming up next week that we'll be posting on our Facebook page and in eBlast about. So stay tuned for more coming up next week as well. And here we are, the main event. This is an opportunity to introduce you to my favorite tanners. And primarily just wanted to introduce you to Emerald Tanner. Of course, they represent Tanner's Indian Arts in Gallup, New Mexico. And Emerald is a fifth generation trader, the daughter of Joe and Cindy, who are also joining Emerald tonight. And they are some of the most well-known American Indian art traders in the Southwest. And for over a decade, the Tanners have collaborated with Crow Canyon to design and lead some phenomenal travel seminars that introduce us to some of the most extraordinary artists and their families throughout the Southwest. It's been an incredible honor to learn about the evolution of American Indian art through time and meeting such extraordinary people. So I'm really grateful that the Tanners were able to join us tonight and share some of the stories that their family legacy really carries on to this day. And tonight, Emerald's going to spotlight some of the origins and revivals of art forms in the Southwest. You can also visit their website at tannersindianarts.com. So I, at this point, am going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Emerald.
Thank you, Sarah. Well, so excited to be here. We're especially grateful for this connection with Crow Canyon right now, undergoing all of the terrible COVID surroundings, especially here, being hit so hard with Navajo Nation and Hopi and Zuni Pueblo. Our hearts go out to everyone that's suffering, and so grateful, especially for the connections that we have with our friends, with our loved ones, with our artist families. And so grateful for this opportunity to connect with all of you. So a special thank you to Sarah, to Taylor, to Dylan for making this possible. My mom and dad are here with me now, and we're so happy to be able to virtually join you today.
We want to thank you all for joining in. And again, Sarah, thank you for involving us. We are passionate about what we do with our families in the Southwest. We appreciate all Crow Canyon does to promote what we're able to do. And I want to thank you all. And hello, hope to see you again, and be safe. Thanks.
Well, we're so excited to have your visit. I normally give everybody a hug and shake their hand, but I talked to President Trump, and he says, it's okay if I say, howdy. Love you for joining us, and look forward to these episodes, Sarah. Thank you. You're always such a pleasure to work with.
Hugs to all. Thank you.
So my mom, Miss Cindy, is going to continue to be sort of our Vanna White. She's bringing some of the pieces to me that I'm going to share with you all. I hope that what you all take away from this is feeling like you're on one of our trips. You know, I want you to feel like you're submerged into the Native American arts and culture, and which is something so dear to us and so close to home. We're so thrilled to be able to live and work where we are. We admire so much the artists that we work with, and have such a love for the Native American arts and culture. And those of you that are that are tuned in, you share that love. So grateful that we can all be together with that today. As Sarah shared in her very gracious introduction, thank you for that, by the way. Dad's great-grandpa Seth, my great-great-grandfather Seth, came west with the Mormon Trail and was one of the first traders of the Southwest area. But the traders that were around before Grandpa Seth, who were the best of them, were the Tewa bead makers and the pueblos of the Tewa Pueblo, such as Nambe area and Santo Domingo and San Ildefonso Pueblo. They were creating currency and means of trade long before silver was even on the American market. One of the earliest examples of Native American jewelry that we've got in the collection here at the store are these Zuni and Pueblo shells that are Mosaic Inlay is the technique that's used. And the pieces that I'm showing you here date back to the mid-19th century. We believe these pieces were created about 1850, 1860. The shell that I brought up first, this is actually Zuni Pueblo. And this is a Tewa Pueblo. The turquoise that's utilized is Cerrillos turquoise, which comes from, those of you that are familiar with the Santa Fe area, there's a grouping of mines in Santa Fe called the Cerrillos mines, and it's that very, very green color typically, and it's got prehistoric mining evidence. It's still turquoise that's used today, and one of the most recognizable turquoises to come out of New Mexico. In talking about the revival style of these very early art forms, there's a few different artists on the, in the market that are creating these sort of revival type pieces, not only in the look of them, but the technique and how they make them. So I want to remind you again and show you this early Zuni piece that Dad's got in his collection, created again about 1850, 1860. These earrings are done by Mr. Brian Tom, who, in our opinion, is just an absolute rising star. Brian is Navajo and Pueblo, and he is just such an innovation of idea. He's so meticulous in his stone cutting and the way he works. He's got such a respect for not only his culture, but surrounding cultures. He draws a lot of inspiration from Zuni work, from other jewelry makers, and has always got a great attitude in creating new pieces, working with us and working with other dealers and other collectors. And he's all of 30 years old, so it's really fun to see him blossom into such a wonderful artist. Another artist that is doing sort of revival style Mosaic Inlay. And just to jump back for some of you that aren't familiar, Mosaic Inlay is a technique that's used when smaller pieces are fitted together without the use of any silver. This piece is done by a very famous lady from the Santo Domingo Pueblo, Mary Lovato. Mary and Dad are probably the longest continually they're the longest continuous relationship that Dad's got with any of our artist friends. Mary and Dad go back for, when did you first start trading with Mary? 1960s, and she still enjoys trading with Dad. Her favorite thing to trade for are turquoise and pinon. So she utilizes the pinon in feast day. So Mary Lovato is another one of those artists that is utilizing the early styles of Tewa Pueblo and of Santo Domingo Pueblo. Another piece by Brian that's just knock your socks off gorgeous is this oversized cuff. And I'm going to try to, I hope you all that are tuning in can see the detail and all the work that Brian does. He's just got an incredible amount of discipline. A fun little fact about Brian and the way that he chooses to work with the jewelry. I always say a good turquoise cutter will get about a 50% yield. So when they start cutting the stone, about 50% of it is lost in trying to cab the stone or utilize it to make it into a new piece of jewelry. And I asked Brian one day, I said, So Brian, what kind of yield do you get out of Dad's Newlander? You know, do you get 50%? You get 60%? Because you're a good cutter. And he just kind of smiled modestly. He said, Emerald, I use all of it. And it's because he utilizes that mosaic technique. So Brian is one to look out for, one of our rising stars, certainly. Another old set of earrings that we've got here in the store are these wonderful Cottonwood Santo Domingo earrings, 1860s, 1870s. To loop back and talk about the incredible capabilities of so many of these Pueblo artists, long before silver was even on the American market, artists were creating jewelry in the pieces I just showed you onto shell, in this case onto cottonwood. So these are wonderful 1870s earrings, Santo Domingo or Kewah Pueblo. And again, Mr. Brian Tom with the Revival, also on cottonwood, utilizing some of Dad's old Cerrillos and abalone shell. So incredible talent. I think that it just speaks volumes about the lapidary capabilities of so many of the Pueblo artists that even without the use of silver, they were creating wonderful adornment. One of my favorite things about Native American jewelry and Native American art is it was first made to be worn and made for personal use. It was personal adornment. It was the weavings that were on the wall in the home. This piece that I'm wearing, I'm going to shift my screen just a little bit. This is an 1860s, 1870s mantel dress. It's one half of a mantel dress. So it's very early, woven by a Navajo woman, most likely. It's got wonderful elements of design. Dad is forever saying that the Navajo weavers are some of the best fashion designers in the world. They're just incredible. All of the patterns are in their head, and it's a joy to wear and share. And I think that's what makes Native American art, Native American jewelry, Native American weaving so special, is because it was first made for personal adornment and to celebrate their culture. And how blessed are we to be able to share that and to enjoy it in our homes and on our necks and on our wrists. So this manta, as I said, 1860s, dates back a while. The revival piece for this manta is by a gentleman weaver who is the son of Barbara Jean Ornelas. His name is Michael Ornelas. And I really wish you all could jump through the screen and touch this, because it's tapestry, which is considered tapestry if it's over a certain amount of warps per inch. It's just incredibly delicate, incredibly soft. Michael is a multi-generation weaver. His mother and his aunts are very famous weavers from the Two Gray Hills region. On our Origins and Revivals tour, we actually included Barbara Jean the last night that we were in Winslow, and I'll talk a little bit more about Mary Colton's vision and the impact that the Fred Harvey houses had on Native American jewelry and art form. So again, this is Michael Ornelas, incredible tapestry and art. Going back to the Tewa traders, long before Grandpa Seth or any of the other traders got here, this is an early 1900s, 1920s, most likely a shaman necklace. And it's got New Mexico turquoise. It's got abalone shell. This was means of trade in the early days of the American Southwest, when the Pueblos were trading with Spanish settlers, when the Pueblos were trading with some of the folks that were coming up from Mexico. They were trading for the Mexican blankets and Mexican silver, things like that. And so the little bead, which we call hishi, started by the Santo Domingos and the Tewa Pueblo Native Americans. It was a means of trade. So your white shell was the $5 bill. Your abalone shell was the $10 bill. The turquoise, the $50, and so on. And they were trading long before there even was currency. This piece up here, the taller one, is by Ray Lovato, and it's all number 8 turquoise. This is sort of a revival style to the old time Hishi beads. And this piece here down on the middle is called a jackla or jacklo, which is the Navajo word for ear string or earring or thing that hangs down. I was doing a little bit of research and getting ready for this, and I was wondering, how long has jewelry been around? Not just Native American jewelry, but jewelry in general. And the word jewelry was derived from a Latin word that's pronounced jocal, which means jewel or my favorite plaything. So for all my jewelry collectors, you love your plaything. So happy to happy to learn that jewelry's long time been worn and understood as a beautiful wearable piece of art, but it's also fun to play with. So thought that was cute. This is another set of the turquoise jackalows done about 1920, some much later, up into the 50s, 60s, 70s. I just wanted to show you kind of the progression of the turquoise beads and how important it was back in the early settling of the American Southwest when livestock trade started to happen. One really good strand of jackalows was fair trade for 30 head of sheep or the choice steer from the herd. This is your revival in the bead making. Now there's so many wonderfully talented artists that I wish I could name all of them. I'm just focusing on some of the artists that we've visited on our trips. These pieces are by Cheryl Yestowa and Peaky Wadsworth, who are incredible bead makers. A lot of the necklaces you see on the market today that are, while beautiful, the beads are typically cut by somebody else. These artists actually prepare and cut their own beads, and with incredible discipline and balance. Cheryl Yestowa was arguably one of the most famous bead makers, along with people like Larry Vasquez, Boyd Sosi, just incredible talent. Pueblo Revival jewelry. So I've shared a lot in terms of the lapidary skill of the early 1900s and the late 1800s. I want to talk a little bit about when silver was brought into the American market of the Southwest. Silver came over around the same time as the Mexican coins were being traded. So that would have been about 1890, turn of the century. And so that's what we call first phase Navajo silversmithing. This necklace here, done right about turn of the century, I would say maybe as late as 19 teens, ingot silver. This figure here is called a naja, and you'll see it on the bottom of any squash blossom necklace. And these blossoms here were actually taken off of the Navajo jewelers saw these buttons on the Spanish soldiers, on the Mexican soldiers' pants, and commonly confused with the pomegranate, which is what it's actually shaped after. And the naja was on the horses of the Spanish horses, and so that was an example of how the Navajo jewelers at that time took a piece and created it and made it into their own. Got another early squash here, done around the same time as the piece that I just showed you. This one has a piece of Cerrillos turquoise dropping from the bottom. And there's a lot of different interpretation as to what the naja stands for, what it means. It's been noted as a way to convey strength. It's also representative of the womb and the continuation of life, and here the babe in the womb. So a lot of different beautiful interpretations for what a squash blossom is. I think people, when they think of Southwest jewelry, even if they don't know a whole lot about it, the squash blossom is so recognizable that comes from our area, and certainly a celebration of Native American silversmithing. For our revival of the squash blossom, this is an artist named Harrison Jim. Harrison is a Navajo or Dene artist that lives in the greater Gallup area, just outside of town, actually. And he's got such an incredible appreciation for early style Navajo silver work. He's one of the most versatile artists I know. You'll see another example of his work when we're talking about ingot and coin jewelry, but he does tufa casting. He does so many different things. And I think what's so amazing about a lot of the artists that we spotlight and that we're so fortunate to work with is they are so innovative, and they are able to take an old concept and utilize new tools and new techniques to make it their own while still paying homage to the early ideas. This is a really, really incredible piece of Lone Mountain, Nevada turquoise. Continuing on with the first phase talk of silver work, this is a first phase concha belt. Created from ingot, done again around the turn of the century. Concha belts are almost as iconic as squash blossoms. The silver work on the conchos are Navajo, and the buckle is by Zuni artist Juan de Dios. The Zunis were big game hunters before they were artists, so you see a lot of interpretation in the work of animals, deer, bears. This is a wonderful depiction of the rams. Incredible worn leather. When we did our Origins and Revivals tour, which was just one of the most fun tours to plan and put together, we were joined by Hopi and Navajo artist Olin Sinjini, and if you aren't familiar with his work, he's just also incredible. I wish I had the piece with me, but maybe he'll send us some pictures. He did a first phase revival concha belt that was just incredible, and for even us, it's hard to look at pieces that Olin does, and it just takes you back 100 years. What's so awesome about these revival pieces, like the squash blossom, like these gatos that I'm about to show you, is that keep in mind there's over 100 years between these pieces. Same thing with the cottonwood earrings that Brian did, and the shells that Mary Lovato did. You're talking about 100 to 150 years between these wonderful pieces, and I just think it's incredible that there's such a steadfast continuation of this beautiful art. While this isn't a revival per se, it's an incredible example of a modern day concha belt. This is by an artist named Ron Bodoni. He's a Navajo artist, and he took the same concept of a concha belt, which was, again, kind of a utilitarian wearable adornment to keep mantel dresses on or to wear, using new techniques and new tools and fabulous turquoise. Ron Bodoni just created this incredible concho that's a modern day version of the concho. I don't know if any of you are familiar with gatos or bow guards. Again, early times, more utilitarian to protect their arms. This is a really early piece. We call it the Grandpa Joe gato because it was created around the time that Grandpa Joe was actively mining turquoise and working with local artists of the time. It's on old leather. It's a old tufa cast gato with old Persian turquoise. Jump forward to about the 70s. Another gato. And then just a few years ago, Matthew White is an artist out of the Farmington Shiprock area, also Navajo, that did this sort of revival style gato. Again, about 100 years between those pieces. So cool. I want to jump back to Zuni and talk about how incredibly innovative they always have been, not just now, but before silver again. This is 3 generations of Zuni carvers. You can see that. So this top little ram, this chubby little guy, he is by Likia de Dios, which is one of the most famous, iconic Zuni carvers of our time. His son grandson, Bernard Homer Jr., who unfortunately passed away last year. We sure miss him. Created this sweet little bear. You can see this is all natural turquoise. Some of you have been familiar with fetish necklaces or fetish carvings. These are examples of Zuni fetishes. And then lastly, this is Old Man Likya's great-great-grandson, Enric Likya. He's a little chubbier than the first ram. But incredible natural turquoise. Of all, Likya has a huge family of multi-talented artists, of grandchildren, great-grandchildren, nieces, nephews. Out of all of the kids, we really feel that Enric has the most kinship to his grandpa. These pieces are just so wonderfully done, and you can see where he drew inspiration from his grandpa and his kind of revival of his own family jewelry.
Emerald, I might interrupt you just for a moment to remind people that if you do have questions for Emerald, there's a little Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. If you click that, you can enter questions in that we can either answer as we go or we could save them to the end. But I wanted to remind folks that that's there. And just because I paused, Emerald, I wonder if you could answer this. How did Native American artists learn to work with silver for adornment at the turn of the century?
So, Sarah, the trade that happened with the Mexican coins and with the silver that happened right around the turn of the century, the Navajos were working with the Mexican jewelers and learning how to do some of the ingot techniques. Tufa casting, as far as I know, is very much derived from Navajo culture. Tufa stone, if you're not familiar with tufa, is a very porous volcanic rock that's harvested out of Navajo Nation and Hopi, and it's one of the oldest forms of Navajo silversmithing. So that's really how they learned. The Navajos then would trade with some of the Zuni artists for the big game hunting. And the Zunis, to my knowledge, also brought some of the silver over to Hopi. See, when Grandpa Seth was at Tanner Springs, that's really the only water source in between Hopi and Zuni. So when they would do trades, they would walk through, that was their watering hole. And so they traded silver with some of the members of Hopi Pueblo. And Hopi started doing silver work, mostly ingot, and then started their own iconic style, the Hopi overlay that so many are familiar with. So in short, that's kind of how silver came about in the Native American jewelry market and how it was started to be used.
Perfect, thank you. And then just, would you be able to quickly explain the ingot technique and the tufa technique as well? The difference between the two?
Oh, my Vanna White's so good. She already brought me a tufa. So this is tufa. Tufa, I would compare it to something that everyone knows, probably like a pumice stone, very porous, and it provides a really incredible texture on the finished jewelry. This is a Tufa bracelet. You can see the finish on it, but harvested out of Hopi Pueblo and out of Navajo. There's an A and a B side of the tufa mold, and an artist will freehand carve. This is by an artist named Aaron Anderson, just incredible tufa cast artist. He's Navajo, lives here in Gallup. But they'll carve an A side and a B side, and the design that you see in here, they'll temper down and melt the silver, whether it's coins or sterling silver, and the tufa mold then self-destructs, and the artist is then able to form it into a finished piece of jewelry. So what's so fun about tufa casting is that each piece is one of one. Each piece is one of a kind because the mold sort of self-destructs after the piece is made. Daryl Dean Begay is an incredible tufa artist. in fact, on this trip, on the Origins and Revivals trip, Daryl Dean was in our courtyard, and he wanted to share with us sort of the connections between Japanese art form and Native American art form, which you see a lot of parallels, even with Zuni and Japanese culture and art form. But he did a demonstration with an old school anvil and heated up with a fire and with charcoal the silver coins and blew the embers, and bless his heart, I think it was 90 degrees in our courtyard, and he showed us how you do old style techniques. Now, of course, with tools, artists can take a blowtorch and they can heat up the silver and do tufa that way. With ingot, ingot is a method that's done by melting down silver and hammering it out. You bring the silver up to a certain temperature. And Olin, when we were in Farmington for our Origins and Revivals tour, he did a demonstration on how to hammer out ingot and forge your own ingot, which is really another way of saying making your own sheet. This hat band is a really early hat band, 1930s, 1940s, and it's also ingot silver. Hope that answers your question. This woman I want to talk about a little bit. Her name is Della Casa Appa, the center woman here. She is from Zuni Pueblo. Della was really a pioneer and trailblazer when it came to Zuni jewelry making for women of the Pueblo. Women at that time were potters, they were weavers, they took care of the home. It was sort of taboo for women to be jewelers. But Della had a husband and they had several small children. Her husband unfortunately passed away, so she started making jewelry. She would go around the Pueblo, so the story goes, and she would make pieces and sell them out of her apron. This is an early Della Casa Appa squash. This is actually was her personal squash, and the turquoise came through Grandpa Joe. That's why it's got a connection with us. Some of you may be familiar with Seiji Wallace. Seiji Wallace was really responsible for kind of the popularization of Zuni jewelry. And when Zuni jewelry shifted from being a dormant wearable art to go to market for sale. So Miss Della, we celebrate her. She was a trailblazer. She was an innovator, and there are so many incredible women artists on the market today, and we really should thank her for being the first. I should have warned you all that this is a very jewelry-based discussion. While I do have a deep love and appreciation for weavings and for pottery and other forms of Southwest Native American art, the Origins and Revivals is very much about jewelry and jewelry making styles, but I did want to showcase, in talking about Della, this is a wonderful water vessel. It's a Zuni pot, done 1890, right around that time. It's just got incredible elements of design, like the Navajo fashion rug weavers. The Zuni potters were incredible because this actually would go on the Oya maidens' heads, and they could balance and walk with water in it.
Show them the bottom.
You can see the sort of dip in the bottom. Incredible piece of history. Kind of looping back to the ingot silver for you guys and the coin silver. A lot of the ingot jewelry was made from coins, but there's also an era in Native American jewelry making where they would actually use the coins in the piece without melting them down. So this is a wonderful example of that. That's another gato with very early coins. A lot of the early squash blossom necklaces and bead necklaces, like this bracelet, you can't see the dimes, but they're actually domed in half dimes and made into jewelry. You still see artists doing this today. This is another piece from the 1930s that was a coin silver jewelry. artists today that are doing this technique, Jesse Robbins is a great example. He's a Creek Native American jeweler that is also an archaeologist and also a turquoise miner, and he does everything. He's an incredible jeweler. Gerald Loma Ventima from Hopi Pueblo is a master ingot coinsmith, does wonderful pieces with coin silver. He did these pieces a few years ago. We had a friend of ours give us a group of coins, and we gave them to Daryl, and he used them to teach his students how to do coin silver. So these, again, that early style of coin jewelry that was done in the 1920s, 1930s, these are pieces that were created last year. Just incredible, all the time lapse between those pieces. Another contemporary piece by Harrison Jim. This is another ingot piece that Harrison did his own ingot. Really fabulous finish he got on that. After kind of the coin jewelry craze in the 1920s, 19-teens, 1930s, short after the 1930s was, of course, the Great Depression. And so you started to see Depression-era jewelry. After the kind of Fred Harvey impact on Southwest jewelry, Fred Harvey had a chain of Harvey houses along the railroad, and artists would come sell there at the railroad station, and it kind of popularized Southwest jewelry for the rest of the country. So iconic pieces like this are Depression-era jewelry. The method is that same mosaic inlay technique, and the materials in this are things like car batteries, things like Dairy Queen spoons, tires. They just were so innovative in the things they used for this Depression-era jewelry. If they couldn't get stones, I'm sure the turquoise came from grandpa or grandma's stash, but they had to innovate with the car batteries and the Dairy Queen spoons. So our revival example of this Depression-era jewelry was actually created about a week and a half ago by Brian Tom, and he blew me away when he brought these in. These are modern revival Depression-era earrings. If you can't see, Mr. Brian inlaid mosaic technique on the back of a circuit board. So it's just so awesome to see what some of these guys are doing with these tough times affiliated with the COVID virus. They're still creating through all of this, and we feel so blessed to be in this area, so we can continue to work with a lot of the artists and continue the creating. I wanted to share a little bit more on Hopi. These are by Victor Cochitiwa. The Hopi Artists, if you're not familiar, Hopi is a very small pueblo within the Navajo Nation. Beautiful, vast, scenic areas. You'll be familiar with names like Verma or Sanwai. Charles Loloma, who is probably the most famous contemporary jeweler of our time. He took Native American jewelry and took it to another level in terms of popularity and its understanding as fine art. Loloma had a big role in that. There's several other artists that were creating overlay. Victor Cochitiwa, Fred Caboti. But the Hopis were encouraged to make their own style of jewelry, different from Navajo, different from Zuni. And so they created these wonderful overlay pieces by taking 2 sheets of silver, oxidizing one side, and carving out designs in the other. And the Hopi overlay artists have such an incredible eye for detail. It's a wonderful little corn maiden. Gerald Loma Ventima, his group of artists, we went to go see them at Hopi on our Origins and Revivals tour, and such an incredible understanding and appreciation for the history of Hopi jewelry making. Chaco Canyon is a beautiful national park here in the Southwest. And some of those early beads that I showed you, remnants of those beads were found in Chaco Canyon. Preston Managna was an artist that worked for and with Dad very closely in the 1960s, 1970s, and he was an incredible tufa smith. Dad really urged the collaborative efforts of a lot of different artists. He would take the silver talent of a Navajo artist and combine it with the lapidary talents of someone from the Zuni Pueblo, someone from Santo Domingo Pueblo, and even the talented Navajo lapidary smiths of the time. But this is a piece that is titled Salute to Chaco. And it's just a celebration of Chaco Canyon and what significant impact it's had on the Navajo Nation and on this area, and sort of paying respect and homage to those early turquoise beads and early deposits that were found at Chaco, old beads and old trade beads. Another example of a collaborative work. This is again a Preston Managna buckle with Brian Tom's inlay. There's another grouping that I wanted to show you, the canteens. Where'd they go? Bear with me. I'm sorry, guys. Any more questions, Sarah? Anyone asking questions?
Yes, we have some great questions about turquoise, actually. So where are contemporary artists sourcing the turquoise, and are the colors of turquoise significant? Do artists tend to cater to one variety or another in their work?
That's a great question. We could have a whole nother talk on turquoise because we all love it so much. And it's so interesting. There's turquoise. The early mines are very much that kind of lighter green color that came out of Cerrillos. Persian turquoise set the standard in the world for what color you think of when you hear the word turquoise. My great-grandpa Joe, Dad's grandpa Joe, imported a lot of turquoise and Mediterranean coral turn of the century and was very much a part of that marriage between turquoise and coral with the Native American artists of that time. But in terms of personal preference and what the artists use, Daryl Deanbegay did an awesome live stream on Facebook last night talking about turquoise, and it's incredible, even within one artist that's creating work for collectors and for gallery owners. There's such a huge variety of different turquoise. So there's some collectors that prefer the more blue. The bluer the better. There's some collectors that like the green colors. And then to answer your question, Sarah, where are artists sourcing turquoise today? There's so many turquoise dealers. There's turquoise miners that sell direct from the mine. Families like ourselves that broker and sell turquoise to the artists and trade for, in exchange for providing the artists with the stone, trading for some of the artist's work. Families like the Winfields, the Ottisons, there's a lot of people in the turquoise dealing business, and then artists like Jesse that are still mining to this day. There's local silver supply stores that sell turquoise. So there's a lot of resources, but it is getting more and more scarce. Turquoise is very rare in its natural form, in its high grade form. It's getting more and more valuable. It's more rare than diamonds, really, when you're talking about natural high grade turquoise. So we always encourage our collector friends. We encourage the artists when they buy turquoise to get documentation, exactly what it is that they're buying and who's selling it to them and what that value is. You have to really, it's that age old, my dad always says this, the age old advice for buying diamonds. If you don't know your diamonds, know your diamond dealer. And the same certainly goes for turquoise. Know who you're buying from and know what you're buying, and getting that documentation or certificate of authenticity is the best way to do that.
Thanks, Emerald. And then just quickly, can you tell us what kind of glue or adhesive is the artists are using for the mosaic pieces?
The contemporary mosaic pieces? That I don't know. I'd have to ask Brian Tom. Have to get him to jump on one of these webinars. They can answer the specific kind of questions in terms of the jewelry making process. I skipped a really important piece in my little presentation. You guys got to bear with me. This is my first time doing this. So the canteens and the flatware and the boxes are a whole collecting realm in its own. I think that it's really important to talk about these because, again, like the wearing blankets, like the beads for trade, like the squash blossoms, these pieces were first made for adornment and utilitarian use. Ambrose Roanhorse, I can't believe I skipped over him. I'm sorry, Ambrose. He was so important in terms of silver making. This is a really early canteen by Ambrose, probably done about 1930, canteen or tobacco holder. And a revival piece of this is by our dear friend Kijo Benali, who is just by far one of the most incredible Navajo silversmiths to date. And I think Roland Long did the inlay. Roland Long is a wonderful Navajo lapidary artist that did the inlay for this. This piece was done about 1980. So 1920s, 1930s, 1980. And this piece, I still can't wrap my head around how Anthony did it. Anthony, if you all are not familiar, Anthony Lovato is Mary Lovato's son. Mary did the wonderful lapidary mosaic inlay on shell that I showed you in the very beginning of this lecture. Anthony Lovato is very much focused on the tufa casting technique, which I think is fascinating that tufa casting is used by the Navajo jewelers, by the Hopi jewelers, you even see some Zuni jewelers doing tufa. But this is an incredible canteen that Anthony Lovato did for my mom, who collects canteens. He did this piece in 1998. Wonderful revival piece. And it's almost paying homage to a concho as well. Wonderful piece. We have so many more pieces that we could pull and so many more artists we can talk about. I'm trying to just go back in my mind, and I wish I could just jump back to our Origins and Revivals trip. Those of you that were with us, we just had the best time. But I want to talk just a little bit about Grand Canyon and the impact and importance that Grand Canyon has for a lot of the tribes of the Southwest. When we were on our Origins and Revivals trip, we visited the Grand Canyon, and were joined by artist Boyd Sosi and his son. The Grand Canyon has origin stories with Zuni Pueblo. In Zuni Pueblo mythology, it's a very important sacred place, as well as other pueblos. So Grand Canyon, we're thrilled to be able to be there and be there in such good company with Boyd and his son. There's another area that we visited there on that trip. We went to Cameron Trading Post, which is right outside of Grand Canyon, and wonderful collectibles. We had a good time visiting that post, and Mary Coulter's architecture, who also in her own right was very responsible for the popularization of not just Southwest culture, but Southwest jewelry. Her beautiful designs at the La Posada in Winslow and at the Grand Canyon. Wonderful places to visit, and just wishing that we could go back. How's everyone doing? You all have any more questions for me?
We have all kinds of questions for you, Emerald. There are a couple people who are dying to know what you're wearing, the squash blossom that you're wearing and the beads. Would you describe some of those for us?
Oh, of course. Thank you for noticing. So I'll start with the squash. I have such a love and respect and appreciation for Miss Della. I just am all about women artists, and I think she is so incredible in her capabilities. But what's so special and unique about this piece is while the cluster work was done by Della and the stone cutting was all done by Della, we actually it was in pieces, and we gave it to Harrison Jim to sort of rework and restring. There was a few missing beads. He sort of went in and complimented. And what's so amazing about artists like Harrison that can take an old style piece and add a little bit of his own touch on it. You can't see where Della stopped and where Harrison began. So that's the squash. It's Old Cerrillos turquoise, Old Cerrillos, New Mexico turquoise. The beads are the coin beads, a lot like this bracelet here, done about 1930s when the coin jewelry was really starting to become popular. These earrings are a wonderful example of Jackalow style earrings. And these are our family mine, the Tanner Tunnel mine out of Arizona. Really, really gorgeous hues of greens and turquoise, sort of the color you think of when you hear the word turquoise. And my necklace is a borrowed necklace from my grandma Stella, Dad's mother. She was amazing. She was a lady trader. She lived on the Navajo reservation and raised 8 kids and learned to speak Navajo, learned to trade. She just was incredible. But she would always say she'd never make one of life's big decisions without first rubbing her turquoise. So admittedly, doing this webinar, being the first time I've ever done anything like this, I was a little nervous. So I needed some grandma support to have my turquoise to rub. I can't forget about our innovators and our artists that are doing the revival style jewelry. That's what I really wanted this to be focused on and about, is the fact that Native American jewelry, Native American art is alive and well, and you can have a love and a soft spot for these old pieces, and you can acquire them from these guys that are doing revival styles. So you get the look of the old jewelry while still supporting contemporary Native American artists, and that's something that we really encourage and promote at Tanner's Indian Arts. So this is a piece by Jesse Robbins, and that's a piece of his Cheyenne, Nevada turquoise that he mined. And the ring is actually a Fred Harvey era ring. I should talk about what you're wearing. Come here. I'm going to get my mom over here so I can show you guys what she's got on. Unbeknownst to her. So there she is. She's my model. This is all Persian turquoise. And we always want to talk about Persian turquoise and how important it was, because again, it really did set the standard for what color turquoise should be. That iconic sort of robin's egg blue, and multiple strands of Persian turquoise as well. And then early style Harrison Gem squash blossom earrings. So
all Persian
today.
And key Jobanoli, of course.
Yes.
And in terms of collecting, besides the United States, which countries have the most interest in and are collectors of Southwest Indian art?
Sure. My dad always talks about the collectors that he had throughout the years from Germany. There's sort of this romanization and fascination with Southwest culture that we see in Germany and in France. He's had some wonderful collectors from that part of the world over the years. More recently, I suppose I shouldn't say recently because it's been going on for about 30 years, Japanese collectors have absolutely stepped up in terms of understanding Native American jewelry, understanding turquoise. The Japanese turquoise collectors are some of the most disciplined. I find it amazing if we're set up at a show, or if we have Japanese collectors visit us here, they'll look in a tray of turquoise and within 30 seconds they pick the 5 or 6 best stones. It's just amazing the amount of study and discipline. And I think a lot of that has to do with the cultural ties between Native American jewelry and Native American culture and Japanese culture, especially with the sword making and the silversmithing in Japanese culture and how it ties to Native American culture. There's people from all over the world that have an interest in Native American jewelry. We're very excited because for the first time in the last 10 years, there was a wonderful exhibit. Can I have Raymond's bracelet? There was a wonderful exhibit at the Museum of the American Indian about 8 years ago, and it was called Glittering World, Navajo Jewelry of the Yazzie Family, and it was at the Smithsonian. And it celebrated artists, Lee Yazzie, Raymond Yazzie, and their collective families. And really, we felt for the first time Native American jewelry was given an international stage. the Museum of the American Indian so beautifully done, and that installation was so beautifully done, and it made an expert out of almost anyone that walked in terms of understanding the culture and the turquoise and understanding what goes into making the jewelry. But here's just a few pieces by the Yazzie family, and I have to credit my dad and Raymond Yazzie for really taking Navajo jewelry to the next level in terms of making it fine art that's comparable with art that you see, jewelry you see at Cartier and Tiffany. It really is fine art, but it's one of a kind. But Raymond and Lee Yazzie, certainly very well-known artists, and have made international collectors out of people outside of not just Germany and France or Japan, but other places around the world. More recently, the Metropolitan Museum just opened up a collection gallery in the American Wing. Again, very exciting. For the first time, Native American art was recognized as fine art in the Metropolitan Museum, which is one of the most famous, certainly one of the most visited museums in the world. So we feel that there's going to be more of an understanding and appreciation for Native American art. Of course, all of us that are in this circle and all of you that are tuning in, you know how special all of this is, and we're thrilled to share it with the rest of the world, and museums and institutions and families like the Dykers that have been so active in promoting Native American art on an international level is so important, not just to the appreciation of this art, but the value and the collectability as well.
Thank you, Emerald. And I think just in the interest of time, we've had so many wonderful questions. I can't get to them all, but there are just a couple more, if I may. One had to deal with, it was specifically on how the artists form the holes in the hishi beads, but it might be sort of more of a broader question in terms of the technology and how technology has changed over time when we talk about origins and revivals.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question. The early bead makers utilized a technique called the push or the pump drill. And artists today, like Joe and Terry Riano and others from the Pueblo, are still using this old technique. What it is it's a drill system, and they push the drill, and that's what gets the hole in between the bead. Now, diamond studded drills now, since diamonds are so hard and turquoise is less hard. Turquoise, if you have a good hard natural stone, it's about a 6 on the MOH scale or the Mohs scale. A diamond is a 10. So innovative techniques today allow artists like Peaky, like Boyd Sosi, they're able to use new technology to create handmade beads. So that's what's being used now, are the diamond drills to make the holes, but it dates way back to the method and technique, the push or the pump drill.
Thank you. And then finally, I wanted to bring up this question, which was really good. If we're not buying jewelry from a dealer, how can we be sure that the items that we purchased are authentic? And with so many shops, stores, galleries, Etsy, I mean, we're just inundated with options. It's so hard to know what's authentic, what's natural. I know that's a big subject that we often spend a week covering on our seminars. In a nutshell, is there a way that you could kind of highlight some of that for us?
Well, kind of going back to what Dad is always saying about buying turquoise. If you don't know your turquoise dealer. That's certainly something that's important. Know who you're dealing with. But when you're talking about the age of technology, and especially now, so many of us are shopping too much online. What you want to make sure and do is get a good invoice, get a good statement from whoever you're buying the piece from, what it is, who made it, what the materials are. Get that invoice and get that assurance from whoever it is you're buying from. We always encourage folks, if you can, buy direct from the artist or buy from a reputable dealer that works closely with the artist. And if you do that, then you'll be in good hands and you'll know what you're getting is authentic. Another just kind of common sense thing is the price a lot of the time will tell you what you're buying. We're not in the good old days of the 60s and 70s when you can find Loloma pieces in the pawn shops and in the antique stores. People with the internet are able to research what they have, and so a lot of times the price can tell you if what you're buying is authentic and what you're buying is real. But you want to be sure and deal with artists, deal with traders, deal with folks that have a good reputation in the business, that sell you the piece with confidence and provide you that certificate of authenticity and provide you with a good solid invoice so you know exactly what you've got in your collection.
Great. Thank you so much, Emerald and Joe and Cindy, and thank all of you for tuning in. And I do want to share my screen because we have had quite a few questions about how to help Native artists or connect with Native artists or even to contribute to relief funds. So I'm going to share my screen and pull up some information that you can go to. Let's see.
Yeah, there's so many of our friends that have asked, how can we help? And of course, we encourage you, if you have a favorite artist, to get something from your favorite artist or get something from a dealer that works with your favorite artist. But in terms of how you can help with essentials and things, Sarah's put together a really great list of various relief funds that the funds that you gift are going to be utilized for someone that really needs that extra help right now.
Yeah, and I'll also, following this webinar, you'll have an opportunity to fill out a webinar evaluation where you can give us some ideas on future webinars that we can provide you with. We'd love to bring Emerald back and especially some of the artists as well. I know that it's really difficult during these uncertain times in getting a hold of people, making sure that our families and our neighbors and our friends are doing well. So we want to let people know that we're thinking of you. We send our love, and we want to connect any way we can. So here are a few options where we can connect, and you can provide us some ideas on future webinars. And then I will follow up with an email that has Emerald's email address and her website information. So that way, if I didn't get to your question today, you can always follow up with Emerald directly, and she'll be happy to answer those. So again, thank you. Yep, there's Cindy. Hi, Cindy.
Hello. Thank you so much. We enjoyed being here. This was a first for us. We hope that you all have enjoyed the time, and we learn something new every time we hear about the turquoise. It's a passion of ours. We love the artists, and we love the people that we have come to know as family. Hope to see you all sometime. Take care. Thanks.
Thank you.
We'll see you down the trail.
And again, a huge thank you to Crow Canyon for involving us. This has been so fun, and thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you down the trail.
Bye.
Bye.